Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to have a longtime Twitter friend, Sarah Dudley, with me today. First time we've been able to chat together, and this, being a live broadcast makes it kind of fun. So, Sarah has a great background in marketing and is currently working for IBM. And I thought she could give some really fun insights into customer experience and the Internet of Things and how kind of marketing, modern day marketing. So how a big enterprise, respected enterprise like IBM is really trying to look at connecting with its customers on a personal and enterprise level. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind giving us a background of kind of what got you to where you are now and what you're doing currently, and then we'll get into kind of some questions.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. And yes, I make lots of great friends on Twitter. I don't know, it has a bad rep sometimes, but I love it. So thanks for that introduction. Like you said, I'm currently working on the product marketing side in IBM Watson IoT. And so I've been with IBM about 6 years now and spent a lot of time on the content marketing side. And so that, from an experience standpoint, definitely plays into an interesting angle. And then also, more recently moved on to product marketing side, so much more involved on the events and kind of crafting customer experiences through that lens. And then also spent time in comms and on more of the strategic side as well. And also recently, I took over, I call it extracurricular activities as the executive director of Boston Content. So kind of leading a community of over 2,000 marketers in Boston and kind of growing that content marketing community.
That's really cool. It kind of brings up a new wave of content that we're kind of all a part of, in that there's so much value in trying to get people to your site and showing kind of different angles on different things. We live in like a world full of distraction and other things. How have you guys tried to stand out from that?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to experiences, you kind of return back to things because of how they make you feel in a lot of ways. I think, experiences, content, how we do marketing these days, it's very oriented around people, right? It's very human focused. And so it's no longer about, what does your product do or what are the key features, at least not right away. You've probably heard this before, but it's like if you're going on a first date with someone, you're not hitting them with like, will you marry me? Yeah. Or maybe weirder things have been seen, I think. But it's really about focusing in on how can we, at any touch point, whether it is a tweet on Twitter or whether, some form of a social post, whether it's a blog, whether it's a white paper or an asset on the web, or whether it's an actual event, I think we're really focused on how can we create an experience that people can relate to. If it's certain pain points, when I think about what I work on every day, it's around, facilities management and infusing IoT into those spaces. And one big focus area is around improving the workplace experience, right? And so for millennials and the next generations coming up, we're really focused on how do you improve experiences for your workforce. And so it's at every touch point, how do you, as your marketing solutions, how do you consider what do they care about most at that point? Not what do we care about most? Yeah. We tend to want to lead with that a lot of times, right? But it's what do they care about most, and how do we bring that forward in a way that we know they want to consume? And so it's really interesting, even when it comes to creating a website. And a lot of people don't think of an experience as being necessarily digital, like a website or a blog post or something like that. But every touch point you have is an experience for that potential customer or for that client that you want to retain. And so it's how do you, if a certain color catches their eye more than another one, right, use that one more. If it's certain terminology that's resonating more than other, you use that more. You test your messaging. You make sure that everything is aligning to what those prospects are most engaging with, because that's the type of stuff that keeps pulling them forward and keeps them interested in learning more from you. And you become a trusted partner as opposed to just somebody trying to sell them something, right? Because we've all been there where somebody just starts pushing something on you the second you meet them, and it's a huge turnoff, especially for buyers in the generations coming forward. And so being able to build that connection before you start throwing stuff at people, I think is huge, whether, like I said, it's a piece of content on the web or whether it is an actual event experience. You don't go just to hear about product, you go for community, you go for networking, you go for entertainment. You go for so many more things than just information.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You made a ton of good points. One I want to latch onto a little bit is the ever since I added kind of like head of marketing to my title, moving over to Cloud App from Adobe, my LinkedIn inbox is just insane. With people trying to sell me things, and also just, somehow they get my corporate email. And that's also messy.
Scary, right? How do they get
that? Right. And what I appreciate though is, I've kind of, with ones that seem like they could be interesting, because I still do look, which, there's value there for salespeople. But the ones that are interesting, I'll reply back and say, hey, take a Cloud App, use Cloud App to take a screen recorded like how-to tutorial of your product and send that over to me. So there's kind of like this, there's been a few that have actually done it. There's been probably the majority who haven't. But the ones who have, I kind of sold them a little bit, but they kind of, went the extra mile and did kind of that experiential sales, motion that you kind of need to do to break through the noise, like you mentioned, to really try and connect one-to-one versus like, okay, this is just an outreach sequence and you're just blasting 1 million people and you're hoping, 500 respond.
Yeah, it's like, they're playing a numbers game, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh, we'll just send the same. When you're getting a personalized message from someone who genuinely wants to connect with you and maybe has done a little bit of work to see, what are your interests, or maybe not even at that level. We joke sometimes about, someone's going to reach out because they know like my siblings' names and like, hey, how's your brother Michael doing? Totally. Like, so there's a line right between personalization and customization and just creepiness. And in this day and age, especially where privacy is so important and not crossing that line for people, because that's the quickest, there's some key ways to break that trust really quickly. One is not being personal enough and you just feel like you're one of the masses. And the other is being so personal that it crosses the line, right? And so it's like, how do you find that happy medium for people that they feel like you want to capture their attention because you care about addressing their challenges and not in like an overly aggressive or uncaring way.
Yeah, it's kind of like that could be like the evolution of, the customer or the chief experience officer is kind of like one of the hot new, C-level titles. And that, oversees a lot of that, like personalization and testing and customer experience and how you're connecting with enterprise customers, and hopefully preventing those like target experiences where they send people, personalized, like congratulations on getting pregnant type stuff when you're not pregnant.
That was Target that did that, right?
Yeah. Hopefully that'll never happen.
Parent found out their child was pregnant or something. Yeah. Target. Oh God.
Yeah. Which is, super creepy, probably based on like buying behavior and other things. But so there's a real fine line there. What do you think is kind of the DNA of a good customer experience?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a couple of things. It's definitely connection. It's customization to a degree. Like I feel like when I'm getting something from you in my inbox or getting an invitation to something or getting targeted by something online, It's because I fall into your target market very specifically, and not in like a very broad way, but like, okay, based on your buying patterns, we know that you like this type of clothing or something like that. Like customize enough where I'm not getting ads or emails or stuff about things that I'm not even remotely involved in, but just because I have a certain title or I work for a certain company or involved in some way, then it's just kind of sent out, to the masses. So there's a customization angle there. And the more that people can address critical pain points, for somebody who works in content marketing, just the ability to improve workflows or something that's very specific to a pain point that I have every day. And also the connection point. I think for an experience to be memorable, for it to be something that I want to share, and I think that's probably the last point is shareability and the desire to want to share. But that connection point where I really, really relate to what you're sharing with me, whether it's at an event, and I was at an event in the fall, and there was this one aspect of it that was tied to a keynote that somebody gave. And then after the keynote, it was, go right on the wall, this huge wall that covered a very big portion of the outside area. What do you want to achieve before you die? And so it tied in really well with the messaging, but it was like, a facilities management conference. It wasn't, real estate conference. It was kind of an interesting angle to play for people. It didn't directly tie to your job or that conference, but it was a connection point, an opportunity to bring together the community of people that you're surrounded with that maybe you hadn't engaged with or interacted with. And you could just read like the biggest fears and visions of these people that were surrounding you that you don't know. And I just remember spending like 15 minutes just looking at it and like nodding my head to certain things, and it leaves you inspired. And then I immediately wanted to share that. And not only did I want to share it on social media, but then I wanted to go back to my team and be like, hey, this was a really interesting thing that I saw happen. Maybe it's something we could think about as a interaction or a connection point for events, big or small. Just taking that concept, while the concept itself was maybe a little dark for all events, just the idea of that sharing opportunity to build a connection with the people that you're trying to bring together, because no matter who you're talking to, there's going to be more than one of those types of people, right? So what's that common link? What's something that brings people together? It could be, just being a human, and what's that human-centered link, but it could also be very specific to the people that you are targeting. Like I think recently the Star Wars United airplane, there's been a lot of stuff around Star Wars lately for the movie coming out. And so just paying attention to, I find some of the stuff some of these experiences that they come out with really interesting. To me, the pop-up experiences that have been happening a lot, like there was the Happy Place in Boston for a while. There's the Friends pop-up now. There's a Britney Spears one going into LA soon that caught my eye.
The like Instagram museum style things, like they had one in the Bay Area forever. I'm trying to think of what it was called. But I saw, like my Instagram feed of like Adobe employees was just basically everybody going there.
The same, you get like the same
little pods of places, little pods of places you can take, basically built for social. But that's really interesting. Like I think, you have a unique perspective, kind of being involved in Internet of Things and like very digital and like the future of work. And there's still like very real, like human element things. Like we all are very similar, even though we have different backgrounds. Like we all have the same, fears and struggles and other things along our lives. In a world where we have so much going on with digital and Internet of Things and other stuff, how can those behaviors with those devices help to kind of create an experience? How can those fit into that?
Yeah, so it's actually funny you ask, and this is a metaphorical example. We actually recently put out like a blog post or a story about how the North Pole uses the IoT to ensure
Cool.
that, Christmas never, that Christmas never fails, that every child gets a toy for the holidays. And obviously the experience is those children getting a toy on Christmas morning. But what you don't see is the massive operations that go on behind the scenes to make that all happen. So
Yeah.
everything from, toy design and putting sensors on toys so you can see how children play and engage with them. And of course, these aren't real
Yeah. Yeah.
but you get what I'm saying. And then, in the workshop that the elves work in, how do we make sure that those spaces are best utilized and optimized for collaboration so that they have, those spaces they need to create and build the toys all year? And then on the operations side, how do we use IoT to ensure that equipment is running as it should, that the maintenance is done when it needs to be done, and so that everything is up and running so that you don't get a situation where the whole shop is down and then, oh my gosh, you can't create millions of toys for boys and girls. And so that ultimate experience is that child on Christmas morning, right? But IoT, and you take that and apply that to real life, and it's like the water that you drink in the morning is, you're receiving that because of the infrastructure that has been built, that you can get water in your home, and IoT sensors are employed to ensure that that infrastructure stands and that maintenance is done when it needs to be done. The same with bridges, the same with, getting electricity, and the same in your workplaces, in your buildings. How are you ensuring that maintenance is done when it needs to be, that facilities are optimized, all of these pieces that people, like you said, we don't necessarily think about a lot of the stuff that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, but that's where a lot of IoT can come in to help keep those things running that you may not even think about on a day-to-day basis. So Christmas and, the North Pole is like a cheeky example of that, but it's a way that people can visualize, what makes those experiences really profound and happen, and all the things that need to happen behind the scenes that we kind of take for granted. And that's really where the power of IoT can come into play. And then of course, there's the personal side. Like I'm sitting here wearing a Fitbit and, it's telling me I need to get up and move more throughout the day, or, how much water have I drank today, that type of stuff. And so in a more simplistic sense, it's how can we use IoT to really improve our lives, improve our daily lives based on the data we're already getting from a variety of different sources about our behaviors and our activities. And it's putting that data to work so that we can better understand what people are doing, how they're behaving, and not just people, but assets, buildings, all of that type of stuff, so that we can make more efficient processes and hopefully cut costs for businesses. And that's always a good thing, right? Saving money.
Yeah, definitely. That North Pole campaign sounds really cool. I'm gonna have to look that up and show it to my kids.
We call them the Millennial Elves.
Yes, that's amazing. I bet that was fun to come up with.
It was. We do one each year as a fun holiday campaign.
So it's been great chatting with you. I kind of just want to close with one question. I've kind of admired IBM and Watson from afar for a very long time. I think it was maybe like 5-ish years ago that you guys kind of rebranded most of your marketing to Watson. What is kind of what's on the table right now with Watson and IoT from IBM's side that you're kind of excited about, and kind of tie that into what you see the future of experience business being?
Yeah, no, I think that in a lot of ways, we're going to continue to infuse IoT and now artificial intelligence, right, into a lot of what we do. And so, one fun thing that we've had at some of our our latest events is she's actually called Sarah. She has a strange resemblance to me, but I was not involved in the making of Sarah. And she's our virtual assistant for buildings, actually. And so using her, you can, it was fun. You could take a picture with Sarah, even though she's virtual and obviously you're real. But this idea of having AI kind of infused into buildings, into your operations, and being able to, take the data you have and those insights that IoT is generating, and then really use that to kind of generate that intelligence, I think, into what you're trying to create in your processes and in your operations or beyond. And so for us, it's, taking something like Sarah and how do you create a virtual assistant for your office, for your operations, going back to that workplace experience, can I book a room faster? Can I find things faster? Can I get someone who can answer my questions easily? That type of thing. So those are some of the kind of the fun things that are coming from an experience standpoint.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what creativity comes out of your department and IBM as a whole. And thanks again for joining me today, and hope to do this again next year.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Joe. Great chatting.